Hey, Dr. Tim Reynolds again. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Pam, and our chief op. I didn't forget your name.
You did.
I kind of forget your name. So the other day, this should be on tape. So the other day, we're driving down the road, and she calls me Tom. Now, we've been together for like 12 years, and she's never called me Tom, and I don't know who Tom is.
Hi, Tom.
But Tom,
Hi, Tom.
if you're out there, I'm looking for you. All right? So I'm coming after you.
Anyway, back to this.
Anyway,
You
back
can edit
to,
that
or
if you'd
no,
like.
you don't edit that out.
No,
You leave that in. That stays. All right. So we're going to talk about the hiring of employees today. How many employees do we have?
Ooh,
80?
I think, somewhere between 78, 82.
Yeah. So
somewhere.
we've had a lot of employees over the years in our different businesses, and so we may not be the world's experts. We don't have 1,000 employees, but I think for small businesses, we've learned some things along the way that we hope we can share with you. So, all right. First question it says on here is, why is it important to hire the right employees?
Well, I think that in our business, the employees represent who we are. They're the people who represent what we stand for. We're big about customer experience, and we need to have the right group out there presenting themselves to the community. The way that they speak to the patients, the way that they answer the phone, all of those things are important. And if you don't have the right team together and that are bought into what you're doing, it's not going to be very successful.
Good. And I think you said something important there that my good friend Keith Cunningham would emphasize: defining the word right.
Yes.
What is the word? What is the definition of the word right when it says hire the right people? And his answer to that is people that fit into the culture you've defined. Because what's right for one place may not be right for somewhere else, right? Okay. So if when hiring, managers receive applications, what do they want to look at? How do they evaluate those applications?
When we first look at an application that comes in with the resume attached, the first thing that I'm going to look for every time is how long have they been at their previous jobs. If it's somebody who has been at 5 different jobs in the last 5 years, some red flags go up. I want somebody who's been long-term places that's used to, that they don't get antsy after 8 or 9 months after training, because it costs a lot to train people and to go through that system. So I think that that's one of them. And then the second thing is really check over the references. Do the references match up to the kind of jobs that they had? Because I'm looking for some personal references and professional references.
So do you call the references?
I do.
Okay.
I don't want all personal references. I want some professional references in there. And if all of the references are personal, it makes me start questioning if their previous bosses and their previous employers don't want to do references for them. It makes me wonder.
And then what do you ask the referencee?
Referencer,
person.
whatever that person.
Yeah.
The person.
What do you ask that person?
I want to know a couple things. If it's a personal reference, if you owned our company, would you hire that person? If it's a professional reference, would you hire them back? I want to know some of the strengths, maybe why they left in their words. There are some guidelines in which you're supposed to follow on those, but usually people are pretty willing to give information. If they're on a reference sheet, usually they're putting a good reference.
Right?
Exactly. And if that person's hesitant to give me much of a reference, then it does make me wonder about it too.
So you get through the reference part, you like the person, you're going to do an interview, and let's say you're doing a phone interview. What do you want to get out of the phone interview?
The phone interviews are actually done by the managers, or the supervisors of that department. I don't do the phone interviews. They're looking for a couple different things. They want that person, they want to know if they're well spoken on the phone, that they sound, that they're educated in the area that we're hiring for. If you get somebody on the phone and they can't sell themselves well on the phone, can't have a normal conversation, we spend a lot of time with patients. We want to make patients comfortable, and that person needs to be comfortable with themselves enough to actually explain things. And then I'm also looking for, what are their expectations? What are their expectations? Sometimes we discuss salary. I like to have that conversation ahead of time, because if we're looking for a $9 an hour employee and they're wanting 14, there's really no point in wasting the time for them.
There's orders.
Yeah, and it really depends on the position that we're hiring for. I kind of need to know the salary range they're looking for.
Okay, so you get through the phone interview, they're happy with the phone interview, and then you bring them in person. Who does the in-person interview?
We actually do a series of interviews. The first interview is always done by the supervisor of that department, because if they've gotten through the phone interview, we know that they're well spoken, that they are on track. Then the next interview is for skill. The skill interview is always done by the supervisor, because the supervisor knows exactly what they're looking for. We've actually had in a couple cases some of the people in that same position go in that interview as well. So if I'm hiring for the front desk, a front desk person may go in the interview as well as a supervisor, because the front desk personnel that's sitting there in that interview knows what they're looking for. They know exactly the job, exactly the roles, exactly the expectations. Sometimes that person can ask questions that the supervisor may not think of. So I think we've just started doing that in the last couple interviews. I think that's a good process because it gives some ownership to the other employees as well, because it's kind of a perk. They get to go kind of help handpick the next person in. And it also gives the other person who's interviewing for the job more of an idea of what's expected of them.
So we hire based on kind of two things: their skill set and then their personality, and do they fit
Exactly.
in. And so the second interview, I'm assuming, is the one you're going to talk about.
Yes.
That talks about the personality and those kinds of
The
things.
second interview, I try and always do the second interview. And like you said, we're still a small company. When we have 1,000 employees, it's going to be hard for me to interview everybody. The reason why I'm doing that currently is it isn't like we have a whole bunch of interviews to do every week.
Right.
We may have maybe 1 or 2 a month.
Right.
And I want to interview the person, and I always bring them in and tell them the same thing. This is a very relaxed interview. Don't be nervous about this. I just want to talk to you. And I try and get them comfortable during that interview, because what I'm looking for completely is attitude. I want to find out what are their goals, what is it they're looking for in life. Because once you get them talking about themselves, they usually start relaxing. And then I can see, does a person seem like they're going to fit into our culture? I ask them directly, what are your expectations of this job? What are you looking for? What are the things that make you happy at work and away from work? If it's a person who I know wants to go back to school in a year, that's not necessarily going to keep me from hiring them. But I do want to know that, what are their future plans.
That may be a short-term thing.
Right, and we do hire some short-term employees, and that's fine.
Well, it's good for us to know and them to know what their expectations are. And
And
sometimes you do this in groups.
Yes.
So what do you try and look for and get out of the group?
Actually, the idea of the group interview actually came to me through our marketer, Mrs. Tina Bader. She had been involved in a group interview with Southwest Airlines. And so we kind of took a direction that they had gone and kind of made it more of kind of what we were looking for. They obviously are interviewing great big huge groups. Our groups, we've done 2 of them so far, and the biggest groups that we've had were 6 people. Group interviews are interesting. They don't necessarily know that they're for a group interview, so that makes it kind of fun to begin with. And I don't do those interviews alone. I always bring one other person there with me. We have a list of questions, and we just banter back and forth with people. To begin with, I specifically ask questions of specific people, but I don't ask the same question
to someone else that you ask.
Yeah, I may come back to that question, but I don't want anybody to be prepared. And it really is interesting when you sit down one-on-one with somebody, you think, oh, I'm not sure if I want that person or if I'm looking for the other person. But when you put them in a room together, the first couple rounds of questions, it's not real obvious, and then about the 3rd or 4th round, the people who are your superstars really start rising to the top. They they're actually trying to sell themselves more. They're trying to come across a little bit more why I should get the job over that person without saying it, and it's a little bit more competitive.
Interesting.
It actually does. They've gone well for us. They really have gone well.
So, what's your favorite question to ask people?
Favorite question to ask people. I know you're supposed to ask strengths and weaknesses, and we go through all of that too, but I actually really want to dig into their brains about what are their goals, what are their future plans, because it kind of tells me
something about them.
It does. It tells me what them are. If they have no future plans and goals,
that
then
tells you
it tells you something else. There's not a lot of drive there.
Right.
But if it's somebody who really has their life mapped out and they have a plan, we get a lot of college students who are looking to just advance in career and maybe going to nursing school, and this is a good stepping stone for them. And it's nice to know that about somebody. So that is probably my favorite question to ask people.
Good. What other advice would you give to people who are hiring people and interviewing people?
I think one thing I'd like to add is we hire for skill and we keep you for attitude, and I make that very well known to people when we hire them. There has actually only been one case since I've started there ever of a person who had the right attitude but lacked the skill. It's only ever been one time. Everybody else who's ever been let go or not hired has always been attitude. They'll have the right skill set, but we're looking for people who are superstars, who have that superstar potential.
I think we tell them that now, right?
I do. I actually tell them that during the interview that I'm expecting superstars and that I have high expectations of them. I think going into the interview, it's important to let them know up front that we don't accept average. We are looking for superstars, and that's not for everybody. I think it's important to take your time interviewing, take your time hiring. Do not, even if you need somebody right now, don't rush into it, because a warm body is just going to fill a chair.
The worst thing you can do is hire a warm body.
It is, and it kills the entire attitude of the entire clinic.
We've learned that lesson over and over. I've been hiring for 20 years now, interviewing for 20 years, and I think I've learned, like you, take your time, hire the right kind of people, do the right thing, skills, attitude, and then some gestalt. Some gestalt of, I feel like this is the right person, it's not the right person. And despite all of that, you still hire sometimes people you think, what the heck was I thinking?
Some people interview really well.
Some people interview well. Some people you don't know until 90 days later, which is why they're on a 90-day probation period. So.
And there is that gut instinct you're talking about. There are times that everything looks good on paper, the interview went well, but there's something telling me that is not the right person for this job. And if that's the case, then I don't hire them.
Oh, good. All right, anything else?
I don't think so.
Thank you for coming over.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll see you in a few minutes in the kitchen.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.